For more on Justice Scalia's legacy and what confirming Judge Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court would mean for the pro-life movement, we turn to tonight's expert panel. Ed Whelan is president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center and a former law clerk to the late Justice Antonin Scalia. And Amy Howe is the founder of SCOTUSblog, a blog devoted to Supreme Court coverage. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you,
Thanks
Catherine.
for having us.
Ed, you knew Justice Scalia well. So do you think Judge Gorsuch is in the same judicial mold?
I think that Judge Gorsuch is an eminently worthy successor to Justice Scalia. Judge Gorsuch embraces originalism and textualism, as Justice Scalia did. He's a very deep and clear thinker. He writes with force and verve. And I think, like Justice Scalia, he's set to have an outsized influence on generations of lawyers.
Amy, Gorsuch has written a book on assisted suicide. How significant is that, and will pro-life views be manifest on the bench?
It's an interesting question. You know, he talks about the sanctity of life, for example, in the book, but he cabins it pretty carefully. It's not a book in which there's a lot that you can necessarily take from his views on euthanasia and assisted suicide and extrapolate them to abortion. And we don't know a lot about what he thinks about abortion. He hasn't really had an abortion case come before him on the 10th Circuit in 10 years.
However, there was a case involving abortion, Planned Parenthood of Utah versus Herbert. What do we know from that? What can we gather about Gorsuch from that ruling?
Well, this was a recent case that involved abortion funding, and specifically whether the Utah governor violated the First Amendment by issuing a directive that state agencies should not pass through federal funds to Planned Parenthood in light of concerns that came out over videos of, I think, misuse of aborted fetuses. As Amy indicated, it wasn't directly a case about abortion, and indeed the principles of law that govern the case were agreed to by both sides. But I think what we saw in this case, in which Judge Gorsuch dissented from the denial of rehearing en banc, was his having the courage to call them as he sees them. He thought that the panel had abused the facts in order to reach a result. He had the courage to point that out and to say, no, this is how the case should have been decided.
So once again, that had to do more with funding, not so much his specific view on abortion.
And it had even more to do with standards of appellate review, of district court fact-finding. But look, when it comes to trying to understand a judge, I think what you'd want to look at are the twin qualities of judicial philosophy and character. As I indicated, Judge Gorsuch embraces the originalism and textualism that Justice Scalia expounded. He has shown through his record of more than a decade on the 10th Circuit that he's quite an excellent judge. And I think he's also shown the second quality of courage to do what's right under the law, no matter what the criticism. So those are the two qualities that I look for in looking for a justice to be like Justice Scalia, so to speak.
As Father Scalia had said in our previous interview, his father did not consider himself, nor would have wanted to be considered, a pro-life judge. Do you think Judge Gorsuch feels the same way?
I'm sure he does, and I think probably the most important thing, if you're looking at what Judge Gorsuch might do on abortion, is the fact that, like Justice Scalia, he regards himself as an originalist. You look at what the framers of the Constitution would have intended at the time that they wrote it. You don't look at the Constitution as some sort of living and breathing document that evolves over time. And it was Justice Scalia's originalist views that led him to oppose abortion, and that suggests that Judge Gorsuch would do the same thing if he became a justice.
How confident can we be that Gorsuch would vote to overturn Roe v. Wade?
Oh, I think anyone who says that he's confident about what any justice or judicial candidate would do is fooling themselves. Look, I think the basic ingredients are there, this judicial philosophy and courage. I believe very strongly that Judge Gorsuch will be an excellent justice, so I'm very hopeful that he will get this and other issues right. We'll see, when the issue gets teed up. Right now, if Judge Gorsuch replaces Justice Scalia, the court will remain 5-4 in favor of Roe. So any change on Roe is going to involve further changes in composition of the court down the road.
And there have been several justices who've been put on the court, two by Ronald Reagan, Sandra Day O'Connor, and Anthony Kennedy, and then David Souter, who was put on the court by George H.W. Bush. And in each of those cases, conservatives believed that they would be justices who would vote to overturn Roe versus Wade. And in fact, they were the three justices who in 1992, in a case called Planned Parenthood versus Casey, joined together to reaffirm the core holding of Roe versus Wade. So you can try to predict what someone's going to do when you get on the bench, but you never really know. And also, when a justice gets on the bench, they're also grappling with an issue called stare decisis, which is Latin for the decision stands. And it's the idea that once something is sort of settled precedent, it should remain that unless there's a good reason to overturn it. And so that would be something else that, if an abortion law were to come to the court, the justices wouldn't necessarily be working with a clean slate. What do we think about Roe versus Wade? But also grappling with this other issue of stare decisis.
One case that EWTN has been following closely is Zubik versus Burwell, including those religious groups and whether or not they should be forced to comply with the contraceptive mandate. Would Gorsuch's confirmation impact that at all? I think a lot of people are curious.
Well, I think what will have a greater impact on that is the election of Donald Trump. Donald Trump can, in one stroke, do away with the requirement that's been imposed on the Little Sisters of the Poor and others, and I believe he's promised to do so. So I don't think we're going to see this issue heavily litigated in the courts. It ought to be taken care of by the administration sooner rather than later.
Excellent. Ed Whelan, Amy Howe, thank you both for that helpful insight as we near the confirmation hearings for Judge Gorsuch.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.